Animals were digging away with their antennae or their hooves or their paws. They dug for a very long time and didn't find any gold. That's like working for 6 months and not getting paid. It was the dwarf with the light brown beard. She gave up and she threw down her axe and she said, "That's it, I give up." And she went stomping back over there on top of the mountain. And she said, "That's it, I give up. This turtle can take over for me. I'm exhausted." Well, just then, the butterfly goat stood up, and she flew over towards the little dwarf who gave up, and galloping at the same time. And she said, "Don't give up, dwarf. Let's try it for 1 more hour, and then we'll all take a break together." "Well, all right. Maybe." Nope, she wasn't going to go. You have to tug on her beard. Well, she decided to dig for 1 more hour. They were all digging together. 59.5 minutes went by. The turtle was starting to wander away. Just then, it was the skunk over here jumped up and said, "Look over here, everyone." Right there in front of the skunk was a huge vein of gold. They all rushed over towards the skunk, which usually doesn't happen. And they started piling the treasure into the treasure bags. They filled them all the way up to the very top with gold. They tried to lift those very, very heavy treasure bags up, but when they tried to lift them up, they all rolled over onto their backs. And they said, "No, that was silly. That didn't work at all." Anybody have an idea? Well, the tall turtle stood up, and she said, "Yes, if we stand up carefully and flip the bag over our shoulder like this, then we can stand up and put all the weight on our back." So they all stood up, and they started to follow the dwarf with the orange beard. She knew a shortcut to the good king's palace. They traveled through Mirkwood Forest that night. It was very dark, and there were lots of frogs out croaking. They had to actually step carefully so they didn't squash on one of those squishy frogs. They got so exhausted from carrying the heavy treasure bags and hopping over frogs that they decided to take a nap next to an old hollow log. They sat down and fell right to sleep in the middle of Mirkwood Forest. While they were sleeping, the worst thing that could happen did happen. Out from the land of Mordor came a large gang of wicked goblins tiptoeing through the forest. They stopped right about there, they put their noses up in the air, and they started sniffing. They looked at each other and they said, "We smell treasure." They spotted the treasure bags below. They were about to pounce when just then the red fox woke up. And the red fox said, "Oh my goodness, animals, dwarves, the goblins are here. Drop your heavy treasure bags and let's run over there. That way, behind a tree." The goblins, they only wanted the treasure bags, so they swooped down, picked up the treasure bags, lifted their swords over their heads, and with an evil laugh, that wasn't very loud, with an evil laugh, oh, that's much better. There you have it. They went marching back to their dungeon. Good marching. And they put the treasure in their dungeon for safekeeping. Meanwhile, the animals and dwarves were still terrified. They went running all over the place, looking for the king. They rushed over this way. As fast as they could go, they realized they were getting closer to the goblins. So they went running that way, towards good King Elasor's palace. They stopped and knocked on the gates. The gates opened up, and out came the king himself, looking very handsome and noble. Sorry, King, usually they applaud that. I don't know why they haven't. The king said, "How may I help you this fine day, animals and dwarves?" And the dwarves, they stood forward towards the king and said, "King, we've got horrible news. digging in the forest with the help of these animals. We had huge bags of treasure. We were on our way to give you, but out from the land of Mordor came 500 goblins, at least. And they were terribly frightening, and they stole all of our gold and took it back with them to the land of Mordor. The king thought this was horrible news, and all of the knights, they heard the news, and they were so furious that the knights put their arms in the air and roared. The king said, "Good roaring, knights, but that's not going to get the treasure back. We're going to get our swords and our shields, and we're going to march on a 400-mile journey all the way to Mordor, and make sure we get the treasure back, and make sure the goblins know not to steal anymore." They made sure they all got a sword and a shield, and they started to follow the king, marching on their 400-mile journey. The dwarves and the animals, they followed all of the brave knights. Oh, slow down, king. There we go. So they marched about 5 miles on their 400-mile journey, and the king, he stopped and said, "Wait a minute, I think we're forgetting something. Knights, do you know what we're forgetting?" The knights scratched their heads and thought. They looked at the dwarves and the animals. "Do you know what we're forgetting?" The dwarves scratched their chin, the animals scratched their heads, they shrugged their shoulders, and I don't know what we're forgetting. I got the directions, we got the swords, we got the shields. Just then it was the butterfly goat who started jumping up and down. She said, "King, we don't have any good magic. We're never going to make it to Mordor on a 400-mile journey if we don't have any good magic with us. Of course, how could we forget?" And they all smacked their foreheads with the palms of their hands. Fortunately, the king knew a shortcut to the land of Rivendell, where all of the princesses lived. So they followed the king into the thick forest of Rivendell. They had to duck under a few branches, and finally they made it to the hidden castle of the beautiful elven princesses. The gates opened up as if by magic, and out stepped the most beautiful princesses they had ever seen before in their entire life. In fact, they were so beautiful, everyone knelt down before them. And the king said, "Princesses, we have horrible news. We're on our way right now on a 400-mile journey to get some treasure back that was stolen by the goblins from these animals and dwarves. We were hoping you could lend us some of your good magic for our journey to the land of Mordor." Well, the princesses, they were so startled at hearing the word Mordor that they opened up their mouths and let out a great big scream. The king said, "Sorry that I stood so close. I was hoping that you could perhaps lend us some magic." The princesses said, "Yes, just a moment. We have to discuss that amongst ourselves."